let me have you stop there. I shared this idea as a way of setting up a tool that we can use to evaluate ideas. So you sort of did that impromptu, your evaluation of this proposed idea. Now, I don't know whether this was true for you, but a lot of audiences I work with, when they first see this idea, because it's a novel idea, what they tend to focus on immediately are the limitations. It won't work. It's going to be awkward to maneuver. The center of gravity is going to be difficult to work with. Doesn't look very stable. The handle's in the wrong spot. That sort of thing. Now, if that's how we evaluate the idea, and this is a different idea about how a wheelbarrow might work, what would happen to the idea if we're overly critical, if we only focus on the limitations? What would happen to the idea? It would die. Or it would get modified in such a way that you would end up with what? A traditional wheelbarrow. So let me propose to you some guidelines and a tool for effectively evaluating especially very novel, unique ideas. First of all, there are 4 guidelines for convergent thinking, as there were 4 guidelines for divergent thinking. So the first guideline for convergent thinking, we're bringing evaluation back into the picture. When we were diverging, we suspended evaluation. When we're using convergent thinking and creative problem solving, we use affirmative judgment. So we're not there to immediately find the shortcomings. We approach an idea in an affirmative way. And I'll give you a demonstration of that in a moment with the tool that I'll share with you. We stay open to novelty. When we generate ideas using our divergent thinking, it doesn't make sense later to go back and ignore all the novel ideas. So we remain open to novel possibilities. We check what our objectives are. In other words, we look at our success criteria when we're screening ideas, and we are deliberate. We're systematic in how we evaluate. Now, I'm going to share with you a tool that will help you to do that. The tool is called PPCO, pluses, potentials, concerns, and overcoming concerns. It's a systematic evaluation tool. The first step, the P here in the acronym PPCO, stands for pluses. First thing you look at when you're using the PPCO, when you're evaluating an idea, are the strengths, good points, positives, pluses. You start with what you like about it first. Then you go into potentials. Potentials, we often evaluate an idea only on what it will do for us now, and we ignore future downstream possibilities. So when we look at potentials, we then create a list of future spin-offs, possibilities, novel aspects. We're using what-if thinking. What if we were to pursue this idea? What might happen? So we're being futurists, if you will. You have to be realistic when you're evaluating. The C stands for concerns, weaknesses, trouble spots, limitations, minuses, shortcomings. But as researchers, I'm sure you understand this. Language and thought are connected. How you form a question is going to have a direct impact on how people respond to that. So when we go to phrase concerns, we phrase them in the form of a question, not something like, well, the wheelbarrow doesn't look like it's going to work, or it's going to be difficult to maneuver. Instead, we phrase our concerns in how to, how might, what might statements. So how might we make this wheelbarrow easier to maneuver? How might we make this wheelbarrow more attractive? When you phrase the concern in the form of a question, what people will naturally do is start to think of solutions because you phrase it as a question rather than a declarative comment. The fourth step in the PPCO is called overcoming concerns. We do that through brainstorming or divergent thinking. It doesn't say it here, but it should. You prioritize your concerns. You prioritize them. And then you start with your biggest concern first. And you engage in divergent thinking to generate as many ideas as you can for how you might overcome that concern. Here's an example of a completed PPCO on the wheelbarrow that I just showed you. So you can see some of the pluses listed here. The hopper has lots of space. The handle seems reinforced, and so forth. Potentials, it might make gardening easier. It might reduce the number of accidents, and so forth. So it's focused on the future, what if. Concerns, notice that they're all phrased in the form of questions. How to make the wheelbarrow easier to maneuver, how to make it more attractive, and so forth. And then we selected how to strengthen the center of gravity as our main concern and generated a few options here. You would generate many more than this. That's how the PPCO works. We're going to apply the PPCO on something real for Synovate. So we're going to go right to, rather than doing the bathtub, we're going to go right to something real. Okay? Oh, by the way, that is a real wheelbarrow called the load dumper. Not too crazy about the name, but it is a real wheelbarrow. And you can imagine at trade shows, the initial reaction that it gets from prospective buyers is, what's that? But it does have some features that makes it much more easier to work with than traditional wheelbarrows. So rather than a traditional wheelbarrow where you pull up on it, you push down on it, which actually makes it safer to maneuver. And this bucket here comes all the way forward, detaches from the handle, which makes dumping much easier. In fact, they typically have very petite women who demonstrate this because it's that easy to maneuver and work with. Oh, there's also a mechanized version. Okay, so let's get to your task. At your tables, you have a PPCO worksheet. What we're going to work on is internal communication at Synovate. You all have a different communication vehicle that you're going to be working on. These are color-coded sheets so that afterwards, when they're collected, they can be sorted more easily. So you're going to do a PPCO to evaluate a method used for internal communication at Synovate. Some of you, on your worksheet, it says Global Insider News. Okay, so your internal newspaper. So some of you will be evaluating that. So what are the pluses? What do you like about it? What are the potentials? In other words, how might you refine or to build on it? What are your concerns? And I don't mean to be pedantic about this, but please phrase your concerns in the form of questions, because the fourth step is to select your biggest concern and then generate ideas to overcome that concern, which we hope are picked up and eventually used to refine that communication vehicle. Others have chatting about business. So that electronic newsletter that comes out, that news piece, when that comes out, what are the things that you like about it? What are the potentials? What are the concerns that you have with it? How might that be improved? Video presentations that are, I understand, posted on the intranet as a way of trickling down, passing out information. Some of you will be working on that. And understand PowerPoint presentations are done in the same way, where you attend an obligatory meeting. You have to be exposed to new ideas. Again, this is a trickle-down method for sharing information. So you all have a different one to work on. You're going to have 15 minutes to work on it. You can choose a different recorder if you want. If the person who's been recording is tired, go ahead and pass that worksheet to someone else. You have 15 minutes to apply the PPCO tool. I'll give you some time warnings as we move through this. You may begin. Okay. I'd like you to wrap up your work. As before, I'm curious to get a few very quick examples. I'm going to come out into the audience. I'm looking for 2 tables to share. We're going to go right to the concerns and ideas for overcoming that concern. So what I'll need to know is, which of the 4 communication vehicles did your team evaluate? What was the main concern? And what ideas do you have to address or overcome that concern? So I'll give you 30 seconds to look over your sheet and see if you're willing to share publicly. There you go.
Hello.
What was the communication
Our
vehicle?
topic was chatting about business. Our key concern was making it more personally relevant for everybody. And our idea was that one day, say every 3 months, that there would be a day of chat, a real chat online with Adrian, where there's a back and forth.
Okay, good. All right, who else would like to share? Table 14. Tell us the communication vehicle and then your...
We looked at gin, and our major concern was how to get people to read it. And we thought that it would be good to have sort of an ongoing story, so you're eager to get the next edition, and also to make people responsible for the content. So say loyalty does one edition, and then maybe a country does another edition, so everyone takes stakeholdership of that.
Okay, good. Thanks. I'm sorry we don't have time to get to more of these. Excuse me. But I think those provide a couple really good examples of how the tool works and how you can enhance ideas by applying the tool. So let me give you a short list of ways in which the PPCO might be applied. It's a wonderful all-purpose tool. You can use it to evaluate a proposed idea. So before you implement an idea, before you run off with it and take action on it, the PPCO can be used to develop the idea further. Often very useful to prevent what we've heard several times today, rework. It can be used to provide feedback. When we do performance evaluations, when I evaluate my faculty or my secretary, I use the PPCO to provide feedback. So here's what's working well. Here's some potentials that I see in terms of your performance. Here are some concerns, always phrased as a how-to. And then jointly we generate ideas to overcome the concerns. Capturing lessons learned. We heard about project management today. I've done some project management training, invoking or bringing into it creative problem solving. The PPCO can be used at the close of a project to capture lessons learned. So what worked well? What are the potentials for the future? What were our concerns? How might we overcome those concerns? Conducting performance reviews, I already mentioned, and developing a product concept. So you might have an initial concept, such as a wheelbarrow or some other idea. You're proposing a new internal communication vehicle, refining that before it's implemented. Okay, that brings us to the end of the content. I want to do a few things to close out this presentation. First, I want you to go to your notes. And in your notes, I had you earlier draw a line down the center. I want you to add to this. Now, perhaps in the middle of the presentation you weren't able to capture your thoughts. I want you to take a minute or two now to jot down in the left column the things that you found interesting. So what were the points of information you found interesting, or a tool or an idea that you found interesting or intriguing? So make some notes to yourself in the left column. What did you find from this presentation that was interesting or intriguing?